All right, guys, we have one last bit of movie news to cover, and that is this. Speaking of Chloe Zhao, well, let's just jump right into it. Chloe Zhao's next project after the Eternals that she's going to be working on, she has been in talks with Universal Studios, and she's now accepted a position where she is going to be directing a brand new version of Dracula. We're gonna get a brand new Dracula movie with a completely different view, completely different look, style, feel. It's this article points out from was the Hollywood Reporter. She's bringing her same signature cinematic style, storytelling style rather, that is, in terms of being outside in natural light and not doing sets, but doing real grounded storytelling in terms of character, in terms of doing something new and different, and actually having something to say. This is the first time. Now, somebody correct me. Somebody on the internet, please correct me. This is the first time that we've had, first of all, an Asian filmmaker do a Dracula film, but also a female director do a Dracula film. Yes, there's like vampire movies. Like vampire movies are like a different thing. Dracula is a very specific character that has a very specific motive, has a very specific story to tell. I think it's fair to say the quintessential, as of now, the quintessential Dracula story that's ever been told was Bela Lugosi, which is it's maybe the second closest to that would be Bram Stoker's Dracula. I believe that was 1991, something like that. Just completely, Francis Ford Coppola directed that. Beautiful, beautiful movie. I'm actually kind of excited to see what this version of Dracula is going to look like, going to feel like, and more specifically, what is Chloe Zhao going to say in this movie? We live in a world now that is so vastly different than the world was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. People are different. Our conversations are different. And, if you're going to remake a movie, if you're going to reboot a movie, cool, okay. But what are you saying? Why now? Why this project? And I think, Universal has been trying to jumpstart their Universal Monster universe again. We got the Mummy movie in 2017, I think, with Tom Cruise, which was a complete train wreck. That movie was just awful, so bad. And they had planned to do an entire monster universe using the Tom Cruise Mummy movie as a jumping off point. It was terrible. The whole thing got scrapped. Fast forward 2 years, 2019, we get The Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss. Brilliant movie. It was made on a shoestring budget of $7 million. It raked in $107 million at the box office, more than 10 times its budget, right? Its production budget. So it did very, very well at the box office, very well received, and it was clever. It was smart, and based on that incarnation of a classic monster movie, we now get to see how Universal is kind of steering the ship a little bit, putting Chloe Zhao in the writing and directing chair of a brand new Dracula project. I think she's going to have something very unique, something very original to say in the guise of the most classic of all vampires, Dracula. Shirley, that's not you.
Yeah.
There you are. I clicked on the wrong thing. Shirley, I'm going to make you magically disappear. And now I'm going to make you magically reappear. Anyway, Shirley,
Invisible Shirley,
Invisible. Uh,
new Universal film. You saw it here first.
Speaking of the Invisible Man, whoop whoop. Anyway, so Shirley, like vampire movies are a dime a dozen. Every decade we have 5 or 10 different versions of vampire films. They are always
Yeah.
popular. They never go away.
I was just saying I was so sick of the trope of like basically like the whiny, angsty, like yeah,
Yeah,
vampire.
yeah.
We, yeah.
But in this report, it's just look at the headline. They're doing it as a sci-fi western, a sci-fi western vampire. I don't even know what that means.
I don't either, but I'm excited. I'm yeah, I'm hoping for Blade Runner and not not something cheesy like what was that? I'm blanking on that Will Smith movie that
Oh,
was a
Wild
Western
Wild
and
West, or even
yeah,
Cowboys and Aliens. Not a great
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Sorry, I love you, John Favreau, but not a great movie.
In my imagination, I have like original Blade Runner vibes. Just I'm obviously projecting a ton. No.
Right now on CBS All Access, The Stand, Stephen King's The Stand is premiering 1 episode a week. Yesterday was the second to last episode of the series. Next week is the last episode of the series. It's a limited series. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. I will do a full review of it probably in 2 weeks after the whole thing comes out, and I've had a chance to watch all of it and process it. But all that is to say, I kind of see that, or if you're not familiar with The Stand, it's a story of like a post-apocalyptic. There's a disease. Very timely. There's a disease called
Yeah.
Captain Trips, and it takes out 95% of the world's population. Only 5% of people are left on planet Earth, and who are immune to Captain Trips. And now they're all kind of like warring for like battle of the Earth, and it's like there's angels and demons, and there's this whole thing with like Las
Yeah.
Vegas, and so it's essentially good versus evil in that regard. So when I think of like a
Well,
sci-fi western, that's kind of
yeah.
some of the imagery that pops up is a lot of the stuff from The Stand. Um,
Yeah.
and I could see kind of like a few if I'm mixing futuristic and sci-fi to mean one, maybe that's unfair to say, but I'm kind of envisioning maybe like a post-apocalyptic like what is the world going to be like after COVID? How are we going to move forward as a society, as a group of people, in terms of acceptance, in terms of just letting people be people, in terms of making decisions, in terms of making smart decisions, and maybe a vampire type disease could be a timely thing to say or use. I don't know. Where do you fall on this?
Yeah. So what I'm really excited about for a woman and a minority to helm like tackle a new a new take, like a new just a new view on a classic story is I'm I'm really excited for what will probably be more nuance. Um, like when I look at some classic stories, the solution and the story can often jump to extremes of, oh, everyone must clash and fight, and some people are good or bad, and that's not real people. Real people are complicated. There's gray area, and even at the beginning of your show today, it was all about like how do you even process the trade-offs involved in a really complex
Yeah.
decision, and everyone's making those like day in and day out on their own personal life level. So i i I think women bring that. This is a very sweeping generalization, because I mean it's crept into modern storytelling and filmmaking a lot I've seen. Um, there is more nuance and for it without I'm not the same artist that Chloe Zhao is, but it's like I'm just excited to see what new lens she's going to bring to it that will then hold up a mirror to us, like for us as the audience, to ourselves, our society. What can we learn about like how we relate to each other, how we can give back, like what we can expect? What do we owe each
Well, yeah,
other?
and I think, like as you point out, that's one of the most interesting things here is that from a female Asian perspective, we've never been able to have that perspective before in a genre like this. Like, why keep retelling the same story from the perspective of a straight white man? A straight white heterosexual man again and again and again. Not to say that straight white heterosexual men can't come up with interesting, new, creative,
That's a great art.
groundbreaking ideas, but
Mhm.
why keep going after the same perspective, or seemingly having the same background again and again and again, when you can have something completely different? Like, ask somebody else who doesn't look like you, who doesn't sound like you, who hasn't had the same life experiences as you.
Yeah.
What can they bring to the table? What can we learn from them? I think that's what makes this
Yeah.
interesting.
It goes back to like what got you excited earlier about, like just talking about things versus telling a story, creating art as a way of bridging like you don't know what's completely inside my head and what I've lived, like how the world comes in towards me. So it's just that like not I don't know, like trying to knock down any category, just saying, hey, like there are all of these other categories that people in this world are living as. Like the world sees us from the outside a certain way, so then that affects how we're treated and then what we experience, right? It's this whole loop. So it's actually just like going to enrich art and like what enters people like everyone's understanding of lived experience. It'll just enrich it. Yeah, like I'm not here to push down a category. I'm just saying, like,
Let's
wow,
expand
we're
it.
all
Let's
from the,
expand it a little bit.
we're gonna, yeah,
Now, I think it also bears mentioning that Chloe Zhao by herself does not mean that this is going to be an excellent film. It could very well end up being a steaming pile of garbage because
yeah,
art, subjectivity, right? There's a reason it's called art as opposed to science, right? So it has the possibility to wind up on the cutting room floor, and Universal will look at this and say, "Oh, nope, this was a bad idea." Not a bad idea because we hired a female Asian director, but I mean, maybe her vision just didn't turn out for whatever reason. I'm not saying it's going to be a great movie. I'm not saying it's going to be a bad movie. It's just important that we explore other people's perspectives. I mean, Spider-Man 3 could be a steaming pile of garbage. The next, I don't know, Star Wars movie could be a steaming pile of garbage. It does, like, whatever the project is, we need to look for talent. We need to look for creative vision. And now we live in a day and age where it is becoming more and more incumbent upon us to find new voices and new storytelling voices. Um,
and can I jump in? I'm so sorry to
yeah, please.
interrupt, but like I super want to underscore your point that like, it because it's art, it isn't a guarantee that a talented artist at the helm will ensure, yeah, like a successful art piece, a film. But there is like this tension with when you're the first of something, right, to break into new
Yeah.
grounds. Like if um, a white male director makes a movie that doesn't do as well, it's that I'm guessing, but like that's not going to make studio heads think, oh, let's not try white male directors anymore.
Exactly.
But
Yes.
it's more loaded with Chloe
Yes.
Zhao, and so part of me holds my breath a
Well,
little,
Wonder Woman
where
was the
it's like,
same thing.
oh, I hope so much. Yeah,
Wonder Woman was the same exact thing. Before Wonder Woman came out, we all looked at it and said, "Oh, this looks great, but what if it's not?" There's a lot riding on, and it wasn't just Patty Jenkins, and it wasn't just Wonder Woman. It was the entire DCEU. Like the whole
yeah,
DC faction of movies was kind of because Man of Steel had mixed reception. Batman versus Superman was a stinker. Suicide Squad was a stinker. Shoot, there was another one. I can't remember what the anyway. But Wonder Woman, everything was riding on Wonder Woman. If Wonder Woman was not a good movie, and I'm not talking an excellent movie, if it wasn't a good movie, the whole thing, crumbles and falls apart. And it wasn't just a good movie; it was an excellent movie. But everything
yeah.
was riding on it. If Wonder Woman didn't work, what would Patty Jane? Oh, great! She won an Academy Award for Monster. She got what's her bucket? Her Oscar for the movie Monster, but that was also like 15 years prior to Wonder Woman. So,
Mhm.
there's, and I hate to say, I mean, you're right. There is a lot riding on this new Dracula movie. What is she going to say? Is it going to be an excellent movie? Um, yeah.
Maybe I mean, this is the type of conversation to have, though, just to call out like, oh, like that's for most people. I don't think we're trying to be bad towards anyone,
No.
but that's like an implicit bias held, where it's like, oh, that says something about like an Asian woman filmmaker versus if a white male director like it it might just be like, oh wow, like that project must have really sucked versus
Right.
like there's a different level of
Right.
assignment of ownership there. Yeah, and like what it represents. So just to have conversations like this is really exciting for me because it's like it's not pointing the finger. It's just sort of like, hey, like we're all imperfect and I do tons of stuff and I'm constantly
Yeah.
learning. Let's just talk.
Just be
Yeah,
aware of
let's
it.
just
Just be aware of it. It's true, and I think
yeah.
that's a great message to end on. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think of Chloe Zhao writing and directing a brand new vision of a Dracula movie? What do you think that it could be like? What do you think it could be about? What things do you think that in her specific artistic voice, what kind of things do you think she's going to bring to the table? What kind of things do you think she's going to say about the world that we live in and a world that we could live in potentially? Jump on down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, click like. If you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what Pickle Rick would want you to do. Hey, Morty, I turned myself into a pickle. I'm Pickle Rick!